to the Humble Scholar. Please do subscribe my channel. And today we are going to study the organic theory of state. That is one of the theories about the nature of the state expounded by Herbert Spencer. So he was a socialist, and in 1880 he presented his organic theory in his book Principles of Sociology. So we are going to discuss the resemblances between the state and the organism, how the state and organism are identical, they are related, and we're also going to look at the differences between the state and organism. Basically, in his whole theory, he has compared the state and organism, and he has tried to convince us that the state is itself also an organism. We will also criticize Spencer's theory and generally the organic theory, and we also see how the organic theory is important and how it's prone to be abused. Now the theory. So first of all, point is that individual is the cell of the state. So it describes that as an organism, whether it's a human, animal, or plant, it consists of the cells. It's composed of the cell, and same is the case that the state consists of individuals. Individual is the cell of the state. The second point is that parallelism in growth and development. Now, Herbert tries to convince us that the way an organism it gets developed and he grows, or it grows, same is the way the state grows and the state gets developed. In case of development, there are 2 points that the growth is from simple to complex. When the organism has just started getting developed, it's either a respiratory surface, it's either a limb, or it's just stomach or some other organ. But then when its development gets started, it gets to be complex, and then other organs get developed, and finally the organism is completed into his own shape. Same is the case with the growth of a state. And when the state starts from a primitive society where they are just the hunter-gatherer society, they are the builders, or they are just the laborers, and then the state gets complicated. So the second point comes that the growth from similar to the dissimilar. Like when the organism starts getting developed, there are just one organ, or there are just it's a chunk of cells. Those are all similar. However, when it's developed, the specialization of the functions we see starts, and the heart has its own function, lungs has its own function, liver has its own function. Similar is case with the state. There is a specialization of functions, there is division of labor, and now some of the individuals are doctors, some are engineers, some are laborers, some are construction workers, etc. So this is parallelism in growth and development of state and organism, how the organism and the state are identical. There are so many resemblances. The next point is the functional interdependence of the parts. In an organism, we see that one part of the body depends upon the true and the good working of the other parts of the body. As we see, if lungs does not work properly, then the blood will not be oxygenated enough, and then the deoxygenated blood will be delivered to all parts of the body, and the parts of the body, due to the lack of oxygen, will be dead. They won't function. So see that if because of the dysfunctioning of the one organ of the body, the rest parts of the body are badly affected. So same is the way in a social organization, in society, in a state. When a certain organ of the society fails to deliver its work, then the other parts of the society are badly affected. Like if the agricultural production is affected somehow, if the laborers do not work, we won't have buildings. If there are no farmers, the farmers are not working properly, the people will not have food. And if the transportation is not working clear properly, there won't be a distribution of food to the different parts of the state. So here in the state also there is an interdependence of the parts on each other. Some individuals, one class of individuals are dependent on other class of individuals. So there is clearly an interdependence. Now there is structural parallelism, not only the functions, not only the growth and development, however the structures of an organism and the state are also there is a striking resemblance, as we see that in an organism there are three kinds of the systems, and we will see that these kinds of the system are also reflected in a state. Number one, the first system is the sustaining system, that is the digestive system in the body, consisting of mouth, intestines, esophagus, stomach. So these are the parts. Then and intestine, yes. So this is the digestive system of the body, helps to digest the food. And so the sustaining system in the state is actually the sustaining system in the state is the industrial or the productive system, industries and the agriculture. So that is related to the food. The second one is the regulating system. Now the regulating system in organism like human body, it's the brain, it's the nerves which regulate the activities of the other parts of the body. And here in state also we have government that regulates the activities of the different organs of state. Law, whether it's lawmaking, it's executive functions, police, army, or citizens are regulating the activities of the citizens, etc. That's the government controls. And the other parts of the body are controlled by brain and nerves. The third one is the distributive system. As the name implies, that it's the distribution of certain thing. Now distributive system in a human body or in an organism consists of blood, that's actually the circulatory system, blood, heart, vessels, more veins and arteries. So they circulate the blood and supply the blood and nutrition to whole parts of the body. And here in state we have this function being performed by the communication and also transportation. So whether it's distribution of information through communication or it's distribution of food and other supplies through transportation. So this is the structural parallelism that we find between organism and the state. Now coming to the last point is the wear and tear and the renewal. So Herbert Spencer says that animal body is constantly renewed by the decay, wear and tear of the old cells, of the old tissues, and the new tissues are regenerated and the new cells take the place of the old cells. So the animal is renewed by such a process. Same is the case with the state, where individuals are born and the individuals gets old and they die, and a new generation of humans take place of the old generation. So the state is also renewed by its components, by its new component parts that are the individuals. So this is also a resemblance. So this was the main concept of the theory as expounded by Herbert Spencer. Now Herbert Spencer, besides pointing out the similarities between an organism and state, finally he was able to also point out two main differences that stops the analogy between the organism and the state. The first one is that organism is concrete and the state is discrete. Now organism is concrete, it means that all the parts or all the cells of the organism, they make a whole continuous and smooth organism. It's concrete, and the cells or the parts of the body cannot work when they are separated from the body. You cannot separate the lungs from the body and expect them to work. Now, however, on the other hand, the state is discrete. The state is consisting of independent, discrete individuals who are able to exist independently of the state. So the other point is that no single center of consciousness in state. Here is a point that uh, in an organism there is one center of the consciousness and brain. However, in society, in a state, there are a number of individuals, and each individual has his own consciousness. There is no common consciousness in the state through which the function of the state is regulated. However, each individual herself act for himself or herself independently of the others. He has his own consciousness. Now, let's get to the criticism of the Spencer's theory. There are certain points. First of all, that on all his theory, he tried to persuade that the state is also an organism, and their state and organism are identical. However, there is no such proof that the state and organism are identical. It's just an analogy that is being drawn by Herbert Spencer, and even the analogy is not complete because the state is discrete and the organism is concrete, as I already have explained. And on the other hand, in animals, in each part of the animal, there is no independent will. So each cell has its own will. The whole organism has one will, that is the brain, through his one conscious center of consciousness. However, in a state, we see that there are a lot of individuals, and each individual has his own center of consciousness. So there are also these differences. Besides these differences, we have a number of other differences that we're going to discuss one by one in the criticism of organic theory in general way. Now the point is, individuals are not like the cells in natural organisms. Now individuals are not like the cells in the natural organisms. Individuals have their own consciousness, while the cells in the natural organism do not have their own consciousness. Individuals each of them have their own mind, while cells do not have such center of consciousness. The second point is that an individual has a life of his own and can exist independently. Now, individual is separate and discrete. He has his own, he is able to exist independently. He can make his own decisions. He can perform his own work. And while we can see that even if individual is separated from the state, he is able to exist and to survive. However, when we cut off a certain part of the body, just like even if it's hands, we cut off the hands cannot work without the help of the rest of the body, without the functioning, without the dependence on the other parts of the body. If it doesn't get blood supply, then no muscles, bones, etc. So only the hands won't be able to work. So there is no concept of the separate existence of the parts of an organism, while the individual can exist independently. Now the third point is that state is not an organism in the physical sense. In the physical sense, if we imply that state is an organism consisting of individuals as its cells, now each of the individual is itself a whole organism, a working functional organism. Now if we say that state an organism, it means that state is a monster, kind of, because state is consisting of a lot of organisms. So if we try to imply that state is an organism consisting of millions of organisms, so it does not make sense, right? Even if we say that the state is one of the associations of aggregations of organisms, so it's not one organism. So we cannot at the end of the day say that state is an organism. Now the second last point is that state has no process of birth, decay and growth and death, just like organism. We see that an organism is made by the union of the female and female organisms, and organism gets developed from within, and it does not the external environment does not really affect its growth. we see that the internal unconscious and natural forces are behind the development of organism. However, when we say that when we see that the state has no such origin, just like and has no such process of birth as the organism have. Secondly, organisms are bound to grow; they are bound to develop. Uh, but in case of the state, and organisms cannot even stop or control their process of growth. However, instead, when the individual's needs and requirements change, the people work, only then the state can grow. And when the people do not like change and progress, the state does not grow, the state does not develop. And the second thing is that um, organism is bound to get old and die, but this is not the case with the state. In the state is a kind of permanent, where the individuals in the state die, but the state remains there. And I missed a point in the second point, that individual has a life of his own and can exist independently. And we saw that the parts of the organism cannot survive independently. Now someone can say that we cut a part of the plant and we bury it in sand, and then a whole lot of a plant will grow out of that part of plant. So it means that the part of the plant can survive. But here again we have a problem, that if we kind of say that even if individuals get separated from a state, individuals are not likely to grow into a whole lot of a state, just like the part of the plant grows and becomes a whole plant. Now discussing the last point is that the state is a social organization. It's not a physical organism. This we see that we have a consciousness of belonging, and a consciousness of belongingness to the state. It's that the state is an abstract entity, while on the other hand we can have a parts of the organism examined under a microscope, but we cannot do the same with state. So these were some of the major differences between organism and a state, and we conclude that we cannot say that the state is an organism. However, regardless of its so many defects and criticizing valid points, this theory has got some importance. Let's see what is it. Now, first of all, that this theory implies that the state is a natural institution. When it says the state is an organism, it means state is a natural institution. And when it says that the individuals are the components and parts of the state, it means that there is an intimate relationship between individual and the state. It means that individuals cannot exist independently and without state. Individuals need state for their existence. So when saying that and implying that, it rejects the social contract theory. And we see that this, please do watch my other lectures for the complete concept of the social contract theory, expounded by J.J. Rousseau, by John Locke, and by Thomas Hobbes. Now, here let me tell you the brief concept of the social contract theory is that man, because of escaping from the state of nature, that is, when the man was a hunter, when he had a hunter society, when there was no security of the rights and liberty and the right to life of the people, then in order to escape that situation, the people came into a contract and formed a state. As a result, gave some authority. People surrendered their authority and gave some authority to the state. Now, what social contract theory implies is that the state is a mechanical invention. It's not natural. However, the organic theory of the nature of the state expresses and expounds that the state is a natural institution. What else is that? Liability of theory to be abused. Now, this Herbert Spencer's when Herbert Spencer came to know that there are certain differences between the state and the organism. He was of the view that it means that even if every individual has his own consciousness in state, it means that the individual that the state should not interfere much into the affairs of the individual. This is what Herbert Spencer used this organic theory as a justification for his theory of laissez-faire individualism. And what laissez-faire individualism says that as the state is created for the welfare of the people, and so it should not and the people know what is actually good for them, so the state should just let them do the people and give them the freedom, and the state should not interfere much into the affairs of the individual. So Herbert Spencer himself used this theory as a justification for his individualism. Now, on the other hand, some of the German exponents of organic theory used this theory in its extreme form, that when the theory states that the individual has no existence out of the state, it means the state is kind of supreme and the state has authority over the individual. So John Locke, over this point, John Locke says that it's the death of will, and it's the destruction of the liberty of individual actually. So by this point, the theory opens the gates towards totalitarianism, despotism. It implies that the individuals should obey the state limitlessly, because the individuals have no existence out of the state. Also, it creates pessimism, because organic theory states that the state will grow. No matter what, the state is going to grow. However, it means that the individuals do not have much part in the growth of the state. So it's not in the hands of the individual to grow the state, but the state will grow itself naturally. Next is this, that this theory of organic theory of the nature of the state does not tell us that what should be the role of the state, what should be the activities to be performed by the state, what are the functions to be performed by the state, and what are the functions to be performed by the individual. So when there is this confusion and there is no clarity about the function of the state, so some of the exponents of this theory have tried to pursue and advocate individualism with the less role of the state, and some of them go to its extreme form and try to advocate the extreme role of the state, the modern socialism, where the state controls everything, means of production, etc. So we see that the theory is liable to be abused because of its uncertainty, because of this lack of clarity, and so the theory becomes a justification for the blind and passive obedience to the dictates of the state, opens a way to despotism, totalitarianism, and fascism. It's good that the theory advocates the importance of the state, and it's infuses the spirit of patriotism in the individual, and a sense in the individual that they should also work for the common good and for the service of the state. However, when this concept is pushed too far, and the state becomes totalitarian and despotic. So this was all about the organic theory expounded by Herbert Spencer, and we saw its criticism, its major differences and resemblances between the state and the individual. So in a nutshell, this theory is all about finding the resemblances, similarities between an individual, between organism and the state. Thank you so much. Do subscribe my channel, and do watch my other lectures on social contract theory, on democracy, on merits and demerits of democracy, on the views on the nature of the state.